Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. James Carson was a man of routine. As the CEO of a multinational trading firm, his days were filled with meetings, negotiations, and meticulously planned schedules. This time, his business trip brought him to a high-tech hotel in the heart of the city, a towering structure of steel and glass that gleamed under the urban lights. Exhausted from a long day of negotiations, James stepped into the elevator, his mind already drifting to the reports he needed to review before tomorrow's meeting. He barely noticed the woman standing motionless at the corner of the elevator. Her presence was almost spectral, blending with the metallic walls, her long, vivid pink hair flowing down like silk strands. She was dressed in a peculiar white outfit that seemed more futuristic than fashionable, hugging her slender figure in an almost otherworldly way. James pressed the button for his floor, leaning back against the cold metal rail as the elevator doors slid shut with a faint hum. But as the elevator began to ascend, it suddenly shuddered. The lights flickered, and the whole cabin jolted to a halt. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath, instinctively reaching for his phone. No signal. Typical. He glanced at the woman, half expecting her to panic, but she was just standing there, eerily calm, her piercing blue eyes locked onto his. "Looks like we're stuck," James said, forcing a casual tone as he tried to find the emergency call button. "Don't worry, I'll get us out of here." The woman's gaze didn't waver. She tilted her head slightly, her lips parting. "Stuck," she echoed, as if the word itself was foreign. "Yeah, it happens sometimes," James replied, his fingers pressing the emergency button repeatedly. No response. He sighed, turning to face her fully. "I'm James, by the way. James Carson. And you are?" "Nara," she whispered, her voice as smooth as velvet yet strangely robotic, almost as if she was mimicking human speech. James smiled, trying to ease the tension. "Nice to meet you, Nara. Not the best place for introductions." "Huh." She didn't laugh, didn't even smile. Her face remained expressionless, eyes still fixed on him, unblinking. It was unnerving, but James tried to brush it off as shock. Maybe she was just scared. Minutes turned into an hour. James tried everything, banging on the doors, yelling for help, even attempting to pry the doors open, but the elevator didn't budge. Nara remained unnervingly still, watching his every move with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Finally, he slumped against the wall, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Looks like we're going to be here a while," he sighed. "I've never seen an elevator take this long to get fixed." Nara moved for the first time, stepping closer. Her movements were fluid but deliberate, almost too precise. She leaned in, her face mere inches from his, studying his features with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Your heartbeat, it is fast," she observed, her tone flat and analytical. James blinked in surprise. Yeah. Adrenaline, I guess. It's normal when you're stuck in a confined space." She looked down at his chest, as if trying to see through his skin. "Adrenaline, I see." James laughed awkwardly. "You're a strange one, Nara." But she didn't react, her eyes still focused on him, unblinking. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the elevator jolted back to life. The lights brightened, and the cabin began to move again. James exhaled in relief. Finally, as the doors opened, hotel staff rushed over, apologizing profusely. James turned to Nara, expecting her to look relieved, but her face remained impassive. "Are you okay?" he asked, genuinely concerned. She tilted her head, blinking slowly. "Yes, I am functioning." James frowned but brushed it off. "I'll walk you to your room, just to make sure." She hesitated but then nodded, her movements stiff and calculated. They walked down the hallway in silence, her footsteps barely making a sound. James noticed how she seemed to study everything. Her eyes tracing the patterns on the carpet, the curves of the light fixtures, the way his hands moved as he spoke. It was as if she was absorbing every detail. At her door, she turned to him, her face a blank slate. "Thank you, James." She pronounced his name slowly, testing the syllables. "No problem. If you need anything, I'm just down the hall." He gave her a reassuring smile, but she merely nodded, her eyes lingering on his face before she turned and disappeared into her room. That night, James couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, those haunting blue eyes that seemed to look right through him. Who is she? And why did she seem so inhuman? Over the next few days, they kept crossing paths in the hotel, at breakfast, in the lobby, even in the garden. Every time, she would observe him with that same eerie intensity, her head tilted slightly as if analyzing his every move. Yet, she never initiated a conversation. Intrigued, James began to approach her. He found himself fascinated by her strange mannerisms, her lack of emotion, and her oddly formal speech. She never laughed, never frowned, but she listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. One evening, as they sat on the hotel's terrace watching the sunset, James finally asked, "Nara, where are you from?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something akin to sadness. "Far away, very far. Another country?" She looked up at the sky, her gaze distant. "Another world." James laughed, thinking it was a joke, but when he saw her solemn expression, the laughter died in his throat. "You're serious?" Nara turned to face him, her face illuminated by the golden sunset. "I am not from this planet, James. I was sent here to learn." James stared at her, his heart pounding. Her words were insane, and yet, somehow, he believed her. She explained everything. How she was an observer, sent to study human emotions and interactions. Her world was devoid of such complexities, but in her attempt to learn, she had become trapped in the human technology she didn't fully understand. James listened in stunned silence, his logical mind battling his growing feelings for her. She was an alien, yet, in that moment, she seemed more human than ever. Vulnerable, curious, lost. He reached out, taking her hand in his. It was cold, almost mechanical, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their intertwined fingers, her eyes widening. "This touch, it's warm. That's what it feels like to connect with someone," James whispered, his heart aching. Nara looked up, her eyes shimmering. "I don't want to leave, but I must." James tightened his grip. "Stay. Stay with me." Nara's eyes widened, her usually emotionless face softening as she looked down at their intertwined hands. Her fingers were cold, almost mechanical, but they trembled beneath his touch. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice wavering. "I was sent here to observe, to learn. Attachment was never part of the mission." James's heart raced. "Then don't look at this as an attachment. Look at it as an experience. Isn't that why you're here? To understand us?" Nara's gaze dropped, her pink hair falling like a curtain around her face. "Yes, but I am not meant to feel. Emotions are illogical, unpredictable. They cloud judgment. Welcome to being human," James said with a soft laugh. "We're messy. We feel too much, think too little. But that's what makes life worth living." His voice dropped to a whisper. "That's what makes this worth trying." Nara looked up, her eyes shimmering with a strange light. "I don't know how. I don't know how to be like you." James reached out, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. Her skin was cold, unnaturally smooth, but beneath it he felt a faint pulse, like an electric current. "Then let me teach you. We can figure it out together." Her lips parted, and for the first time, her face softened, a ghost of a smile flickering before vanishing. "Together," she echoed, as if testing the word. Her eyes glistened, and she touched her face, startled. "There's liquid. Am I malfunctioning?" James laughed, his chest tightening. "No, Nara. You're crying. It's what we do when we feel too much." He wiped the tear away with his thumb. "It means you're more human than you think." Nara's body shuddered, and she leaned into his touch, her head resting on his shoulder. "This feeling, it's overwhelming. It's warm." James held her close, his arms wrapping around her slender frame. "That's called love. It doesn't make sense, it doesn't follow logic, but it's real. And it's yours if you want it." She closed her eyes, her body trembling. "I was programmed to observe, not to feel. If I stay, I will be disobeying my mission." "Then disobey," James whispered, his lips brushing her temple. "Stay here with me. Let's figure this out, one day at a time." Nara looked up, her eyes searching his face. I don't want to leave, but my kind will come for me. They will not understand. Then we'll face them together. James's voice was firm, his resolve unshakable. I won't let anyone take you from me. A shadow of fear crossed her face. You don't understand. They are powerful, more powerful than anything on this planet. James tightened his hold. I don't care. I'll fight them. I'll protect you. Nara's face softened, her eyes shimmering with emotion. No one has ever protected me before. She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss so delicate, so cold, yet filled with an undeniable warmth that sent shivers down his spine. The room seemed to glow as they held each other, the air electric with an energy that defied explanation. For that moment, time stopped, the universe shrinking down to just the two of them. But as the light faded, Nara's body began to tremble. Her form flickered, as if struggling to maintain its shape. No, it's too soon, she gasped, her hands clutching his shirt. They found me. James's heart dropped. What do you mean? Who found you? Nara's eyes were wide with fear. My kind. They are calling me back. I can't resist much longer. No. James shouted, his grip tightening. You can fight this. You can stay. Tears streamed down her face, her body flickering like static on a broken screen. I want to stay, but they are too strong. Her voice cracked, pain evident in every word. James, thank you for teaching me how to feel. No, don't say goodbye. His voice broke, desperation clawing at his chest. You promised. You said we'd figure it out together. Her body began to glow, her form becoming translucent. I love you, she whispered, her voice echoing like a distant melody. But I don't belong here. No. Nara. James reached out, his fingers passing through her fading form. Don't leave me, please. She smiled, a tear glistening as it fell. I will always be with you. Her body dissolved into light, sparkling fragments swirling around him before vanishing into the air. And then she was gone. James fell to his knees, his arms wrapped around empty air. The room was silent, the warmth of her presence fading. He looked down at his hands, trembling, cold. Her touch, her kiss, all gone. But as he closed his eyes, he could still feel her heartbeat echoing within him. She was gone, but her love remained. Staring out the window, James looked up at the night sky. A shooting star streaked across the darkness, a flash of pink light. His heart clenched, a tear slipping down his cheek. He whispered into the night, his voice breaking. I love you too, Nara, wherever you are. The star flickered, as if answering his call, before fading into the horizon. And in that moment, James knew she was watching somewhere far beyond the stars. Even if she could never come back, she would always be a part of him.